Hey everybody, my name's Andy, and I'm the guy that developed this game, which is called Split Second. So Split Second is a solitaire, card-based war game that also uses, obviously, the whole handful of dice to simulate kind of very brief, intense bouts of violent activity, like room clearing or like assaults on strongholds, the kind of stuff that you did in the old Rainbow Six games or the newer game Door Kickers, if you guys have played those, but those are both the video games. Or I guess you could compare it as well to a more kind of intimate, zoomed-in version of the game like Warfighter, where you have a group of guys and you boss them around and tell them where to go and what to do and who to shoot. So this is a bit like that, except that there's a little bit more granularity. So for example, if you've got a bad guy, he might be hiding behind something like a hardcover card, and then you might need your guys to hide behind something like a soft cover card to shoot back at him. So another thing that's important is when you're bossing the guys around, there's two things happening. One thing is that every decision that you make will be made with time pressure. So you need something like a timer app like this. So during each round, once this is running, you only have so long to tell your guys what they're able to do throughout the course of the round. And if you don't tell them what to do, or they decide not to listen to you because of stress or something similar, they'll just follow their own actions. So both the bad guys and the good guys in this game are called operators, cards like this, and the bad guys are called hostiles, cards like this. And as you can see, at the bottom of both cards, they have a string of instructions. I'm going to apologize, I'm not a cinematographer here, and I'm recording this in my kitchen, so the cinematography might not be Scorsese level, but everybody has kind of an algorithm, whether they're an operator or a hostile, of what they'll do, and it's simple yes, no. So they'll do the first thing that they match the criteria to perform, and if they don't meet that criteria, you keep going until they do something or they interact with an object on the board. So it makes each automata pretty simple, but each hostile has their own, so they behave differently. So this psycho is prone to just running towards your guys in a drug-induced frenzy and then stabbing them to death. Whereas the troubleshooter actively runs away from your guys as you get closer because he likes to shoot at them from farther away. So the different enemies behave differently and they require different solutions to deal with them. So the other thing that's important is, unlike most games where you play kind of on a board and maybe you move your guys 6 inches or you move them 4 hexes, in this game everything's built in little decks of cards that you shuffle together and randomize them. And that means that every time you play what we call an encounter, which is a group of bad guys and obstacles for your operators to work their way through, it's randomized, so it gives the game a lot of replayability. Now, you could say that creates some inconsistency as well, but because this is a solitaire game, I wanted it to have kind of some degree of ability to surprise you for not only the sake of replayability, but to also create that kind of unpredictability that makes it more challenging for you to adapt on the fly. So that's a very broad overview, again, in the most kind of stripped down points. Card-giving game, decisions made under pressure, everything has a mind of its own and might act on its own impulses, and it uses lots of dice, and there's randomization based on the layouts. So the encounters might always contain the same objects, but the way that you'll see them each time is going to be different. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to briefly run you guys through the training operations, which are totally free. You can download those, and you'll get all of this stuff except for the dice. Those are mine. You can't have those, and they're not cheap. And I guess you can't have this pill organizer that I use for tokens. But other than that, the token sheets are totally free. You get these little standees to use as your operators. You get the printouts for the operator cards, these things. Everything here, like I said, other than the dice in this tray, you'll get. You just have to cut it out, and it doesn't take very long to cut it out. Now, some people might have an issue with using this number of dice. First of all, you don't use them all. But you do need some way to codify them. So you'll need differently colored dice in one set ranging from D4 to D10. And then you'll need a couple of dice in each category. If you don't have those, there's a million dice roller apps that you can use on your phone, or you can use on a tablet, which is even better. The other thing that you will need is some kind of stopwatch program. I like this guy because it's big and it's repeatable. When a round ends, I can just push this thing and it'll replay the same settings. This is just called interval timer, so I'm sure there's 1,000 apps named the same thing. But you can just use an egg timer or whatever. Anything that just keeps track of short periods of time, I don't think you'll ever go much longer than a minute that you'll need to record, and you just need something that alerts you when that time frame is over. So that's an overview of the components for the training operations. Now the full game has a lot more stuff. There's 208 cards, and you need multiple copies of many of those cards. But it lets you create a very broad range of scenarios. All you're going to see here in the training operations are two extremely basic kind of encounters that you'll have. An actual training operation, we're going to be shooting up a practice target, and then a bit of a firefight with some thugs, psychos, and a troubleshooter. Those are syndicate bad guys. There's 3 types of bad guys as well. There's a syndicate, there's a militia, and there's a rival private military corporation that you'll have to deal with in the full game. So I'm going to show you guys how to set up a mission, and then I'm going to actually play through it. So we'll work through the sequence of play, which is in this reference sheet, which you also get, that tells you the sequence of an operation and the things that your operators can do based on their order tokens. So we'll get to that in a minute. So first thing we're going to do is select the mission. So that's going to come from the training operations handbook that you get. Now I didn't actually print out a physical copy because I hate wasting paper, and I have the full thing, but I've got it on my tablet here, and I'll try to put it on the screen. So basically that gives you a bit of a mission briefing and tells you kind of the special rules and, most importantly, what cards you're going to need for this mission. So to organize for the mission, usually you get a budget, but in this one we don't have a budget. Instead, we have a predetermined layout for our operators that we're going to take on this mission. So I'm going to clear most of this stuff out because I know what we're going to have. We're going to have the alpha operator, which is kind of the vanilla bread and butter guy. He's good at everything. He has one big perk, but he doesn't have as strong a specialization as most of the other operators do, but he's pretty good at a little bit of everything. So we can get rid of all the hostiles, we can get rid of our beta operator and his token. We're still going to need that. So to get an operator ready, we have an operator board. So this shows the operator's card. That's going to be the alpha. He costs 10 bucks. These are his stats, and these are his behaviors when he's left to his own devices. So if he gets stressed out, or if you just don't tell him what to do, he'll automatically do these things. So put the operator card up there, and then for the sake of this mission, he gets a battle rifle, and he gets a service pistol. So let's go over this piece of equipment. I'll try to put it up on the screen, but like I said, I'm not a video guy. So the battle rifle, you can see illustration. I think it's pretty clear what it is. It's got a name, it's got a cost. It costs $3, and then it says 2H up in the right-hand corner. That means it's two-handed. So he can only carry one two-handed piece of equipment at a time. The pistol, conversely, is 1H, or one-handed. So he could have a handgun in this hand and then grenades in the other hand. You could have 2 ready pieces of equipment. So back to the rifle, then it's got 2 modes, 1 and 2. So when you put an order token on a guy, which is this little square here, now some of them you can see they're still my prototyping tokens, but most of them are pretty nice now. If you print and play it, they'll look better. So these are color-coded. So the alpha operator is red. I even have him in a red card sleeve. He's on the red operator board, and then his order tokens are also red. Depending on where these order tokens are placed on the board relative to other cards, it will change what he does. And with the battle rifle, as an example, if I put this order 1 token on a bad guy, he's going to use the number 1 mode of the battle rifle. So that means that he'll roll a d8, and then he'll add his ballistic weapon skill, because this is a ballistic piece of equipment, it's an automatic rifle. And he'll compare that to a target number, which is created by the defense of the enemy. And if he equals or surpasses that, he applies an effect. So in this case, the effect is damage. It's pretty straightforward with this thing. And then it has ranges on the bottom. So at the closest range, it doesn't add anything. At medium range, it's +2. At longer range, it doesn't add anything. At the very long range, it's -2. And penetration 1, which is useful for shooting at guys that are in cover, because it kind of goes through them. The pistol is quite a bit weaker. So it only rolls 2d4, so it's more prone to running out of ammunition, as you'll see. And its effects aren't as good. It's pretty easy to trigger suppression with it. Getting damage is more tricky because it's only rolling 1d4. So the pistol's kind of a backup weapon, but it is useful at close range, where it gets a +1 modifier. And if we actually get into close quarters combat, I can use it as a handgun in close quarters combat, and adds 2 to my CQC score. And the alpha operator's CQC is really good, d6 +3. It also has this ability called swap. So if I'm carrying this piece of equipment in a carried equipment slot, pretty straightforward, At any time, let's say my battle rifle runs out of ammo, which you'll see happen, I can just swap to the pistol and perform the same action using it. Same thing happens if someone runs up to me into close quarters combat and I've got the rifle out, I can swap as a freebie at any time and use the service pistol if need be. So that's my operator preparation. He's ready to go. I didn't get to make any choices here. So I'm going to have the battle rifle put in the center of the ready equipment 1 and 2 slots to reflect that it's two-handed. He's carrying them both. The service pistol is going to go down here in a carried equipment piece, and then the operator goes in the upper corner. Put his operator pawn on there. So this is the marker for where the operator is physically located during an operation. Movement and positions are kind of abstracted. Everything's relative to other cards. So to move him around, he'll basically move from touching one card to another most of the time. And then these are the things I'll use to provide him with orders on the clock. So my operator's ready, so now we're going to organize the opposition. Okay, so now that we've got our operators organized, we're going to organize the opposition. So you determine what the opposition is by looking at the mission briefing, and it gives you a set of mission cards, and then it breaks those down into encounters. So the mission cards, those are the totality of all the props, the area dividers, and the enemies, the hostiles, that your operators will encounter during the scenario. And those are split up into encounters, which are just smaller bite-sized chunks of things that they have to deal with, so they don't have to get everything thrown at them all at once. So the encounters might represent something like going into a different room, or a different area in the wilderness, that kind of thing, just segmented encounters. But first, you just get all of your cards together. So those are listed under mission cards. So the first thing you do is get together the enemy roster, and for the training operation we're going to play here, it's just 2 thugs. So you can get rid of everything but a pair of thugs, and those sit in their own spot. And then we're going to get our prop roster together. So the enemy and prop rosters, those all get shuffled together, and then they're randomized throughout the encounters completely. If you have multiple encounters, you don't know which of these thugs will end up in which encounter. Whereas the extra enemies get put into specific encounters as per the instructions in the briefing. So for our prop roster for this, we've got 2 hard cover and 2 soft cover. And then we can get rid of the rest of these guys. And then there's no extra enemies. And then we have some extra props. So we have an area divider. This is used to segment the battlefield into ranges. And then we have a practice target. This is a practice target for my guy to shoot at to demonstrate how the game works. And then we have 2 access cards. So these are special prop cards that represent things like doors. Now, in the training scenarios, you don't have access to a whole lot of variety of these. You have 2 standard accesses. Those are just doorways your guys can walk through. But then there's also this special one called an AO boundary, Area of Operations boundary, and that represents the edge of a battlefield. So when you're done all your layouts and everything's in position, this will be the very last card that you put into play. And that'll tell you kind of what the edge is of where everything is happening. The invisible wall, so to speak, if this was a video game. So we'll very quickly go over the properties of each of these. If you want more in-depth analysis of that or an explanation, as I said, everything is free. So you can check that out, no problem. The full rule book is free and comes with the training operations. So here's a thug. This is a hostile. This is as basic as it gets. I have no idea how well this is going to show up on the camera, so I'm going to try to just put an image of it on the screen. So there's a little number in the upper left-hand corner next to my horrendous art. That will indicate to you the cards that you need to organize under the mission cards. So if you need enemies 87 to 88, I knew I just needed 2 thugs, but you know what? We'll be complete here. 87 and 88. There. So that means you don't have to actually look for thugs. You can just look for those numbers, and if you keep your cards organized in a linear manner using these numbers, it'll be very easy to organize your missions. So that's what those numbers are for. They don't do anything during the game. Then we have the name of the hostile type, so he's a thug. And then behind him, there's a colored emblem, and that emblem corresponds with initiative cards. So initiative cards dictate when these bad guys will activate, and does the same thing with my operator. So I have the alpha operator on the red board. That will be his initiative card. When that comes up in the initiative stack, it's his turn to act. So for the thugs, they use this diamond shape. Whenever that comes up, that means all the thugs, because they're all the ones in that hostile group, they'll all activate. And then below that, we have a couple basic stats. So ballistic is 2d6. When he's shooting at somebody with a ballistic attack, he'll roll 2d6, and then he'll add a range modifier, depending on the range, and compare that to the defense value of my operator. And if he equals it, or he exceeds it, he'll apply these listed effects. So the listed effects for the thug are suppression and damage. So if he equals my defense, then he'll apply suppression. But if he surpasses it by 3 or more, or I'm already suppressed, then you'll upgrade that effect to damage. And damage is bad for the operators. They can't take a whole lot. And then in close quarters combat, so if my operator runs right up to him or he runs up to mine, he rolls 1d6. So he's not a bad fighter, but his only effect is damage. And then for defense, 7. So if you catch a thug out of cover, he's pretty much dead. Very easy to shoot. Morale is 7. So what morale does is it lets them shake off being suppressed or shocked, which you'll see when I'm playing. That just applies debuffs. But another important thing for it is some of them will run away if their morale gets low enough, and some of the hostiles have skills that are based on this morale. So if the thug ever needs to make a morale check, he rolls 2d6 and then compares that to his number of 7, and if the result is equal to or greater than the modified value, it's a success. He has 1 wound, so he can be damaged once before becoming incapacitated, and if he gets wounded again after that, he dies. And then he has a mobility of 1, so if he's told to move, he can only use 1 movement point, which again, we'll explain a little bit more during play. And then down here is his algorithm for his own activity, his automated actions. So he'll flee if the number of operators equal or outnumber the hostiles, and he gets +2 mobility during this action. So he's really good at running away when he's the only guy left. He'll try to move towards closest cover in the same area as an operator, so they come towards the operator, but they're mindful to move to cover. They'll hide and rally if they're being suppressed. They'll shoot at you as long as the target value to shoot at you is below 10. And supporting fire, so that means they'll just sit there and spray bullets, and then other bad guys can use that to reduce the defense of your operator. And then if there's nothing else for them to do, they'll just shoot at the operator with the lowest value that they have to score. So those are the hostile cards, very basic rundown. So then for the props, these are even easier. So a prop is something that just sits on the battlefield, and then combatants, like the hostiles or the operators, move adjacent to them. So they represent both space and often physical properties that will prevent them from getting hurt. So for example, the soft cover has a cover value of 2. So as long as the thug is adjacent to this thing, his defense goes up by 2 and becomes 9. It has a capacity of 2. So if there's 2 thugs adjacent to this thing, where's the red pawn? We'll just use the blue one, it's close at hand. My operator, if he comes up to this piece of cover, well, there's already 2 guys benefiting from it and only has a capacity of 2. So he can't benefit from the cover. He can still move adjacent to it, but he won't get the cover. So that just means I put it on the left side of the card. If I go on the right side of the card, that means I'm flanking, and combatants that are benefiting from cover are denied that benefit versus this combatant. The prop itself has a defense of 4, so it's very easy to shoot at, and it has an armor of 2, so it's slightly harder to damage. And as you can see, there's a little 6 in bracket here. That just combines the two. It's an ease of play thing, so that you don't have to be doing the math every time you look at a prop. And it can take 3 damage, because it's integrity 3, before it gets removed from play. That's the majority of how props work. There's a couple other things, like, for example, the area divider. I guess I'll just do a demonstration of how range works right now. So if this soft cover is positioned here, and we've got a standard access, so let's say the operators enter the encounter through this access. Then we've got the soft cover, and then up here we have a thug. Everything below this line on the area divider is at 1 range, and everything above it is at a different range or area. So right now, let's say this is an operator. Everything below that line, we'll remove everything to make this as easy as possible. Everything below this line is at range 0 relative to this operator. Or, for example, the standard access is at range 0 relative to this soft cover. And then this thug is at range 1 relative to the soft cover, the operator token, and the standard access. That's what this area divider does. It just splits things up into different areas. And then to move to another area, your guy has to move adjacent to an area divider, and then he can bop over into the next area from there. Okay, so there's a quick rundown of how these cards work. So then let's put together the encounters. We'll build them. So to do that, we're going to build encounter number 1, the training room. So the initial access is a standard access. So that's how your guys are going to come into the room. And then there's no hostiles in this room. And then there's 2 props listed, a practice target and a random. So to demonstrate how we build something with a random, we know that this is an extra prop, so we put it aside, and then the same thing happens with the area divider. We set those aside. They're not getting shuffled in. Whereas our hostile roster of 2 thugs, I mean, I wish there were more cards. We shuffle them, and then we put those aside. Those are the hostiles. And then the prop roster, 2 soft cover, 2 hard cover. We shuffle those up, and we put them aside, and they're both face down. So we've got hostile roster, and then a prop roster. So for encounter 1, we need a standard access, no hostiles, and then we need a practice target, and then a random prop. So we don't look at what this is. We peel it off the top, shuffle it up. Now this looks pretty lame because there's only 2 cards in this encounter, but you get the idea. Then take the encounter card, the access card, and put it on the bottom of that little pile, and then turn it face up. You know what the access card is, but you don't know the contents below it. Well, sorry, you know the contents of it, but you don't know in which order they'll appear, and that will make a big difference later on in terms of how the encounter gets laid out, how your guys bump into it. So then we'll build our second encounter, live fire. So this requires the AO boundary. So keep that aside. And then we need 2 random hostiles. They could be anything. And then we need 3 random props and 1 area divider open. We'll shuffle these together. And then we put the access card on the bottom, which is the AO boundary, which means this is the end of the scenario, and flip it up. And now we have our 2 encounters ready to go. So encounter number 1, the training room, and then encounter number 2, live fire. We set those aside somewhere that we can easily access them during play, and also that maintains their order so we understand what we're doing. And then the standard access, which is how our operators will initially come into the encounter, is put directly in front of us. So now we've organized our hostile and prop rosters, we've compiled the encounter, so now we're going to go on to executing the operation. You're going to see how it actually plays. The round tracker set to the first round. We've got our 2 encounters, we've got the standard access. We're going to put our operator pawn adjacent to that standard access because that's where he starts the scenario. And we've got our operator's board. I'm going to ask for a little grace here because I'm playing with a very limited play area to keep it on camera. So now that we've got everything laid out, we set our initial timer. So I've got my stopwatch program here. So I have 15 seconds for what's called the initial layout, and that's how I put the cards into play in a randomized manner. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. You'll see how I execute it, and then I'll play it back and explain what's happening during that. So here we go. The timer gives me 5 seconds to get ready. So I put the cards down, like so, and then I assign my operator orders. And I'm going to tell him to shoot this practice target twice. All done. So if that timer goes off, I'm no longer allowed to place these orders, and that means that this operator is just going to perform actions based on his own instincts. So this is what we're looking at. The operator kicks open the door, the standard access, and he sees hard cover, and there's a practice target sitting directly in front of him. And then there's a standard access. Now, if he's adjacent to that, and there's no bad guys in play, he'll move through that and enter the next encounter. But we're not going to do that now. So I've assigned him 2 orders that are the same. There's 2 order tokens on the practice target. They're both order 1. If there's an order token sitting on top of a target in that manner, he's going to use mode 1 for the battle rifle against it. So to use a rifle or similar piece of equipment, a weapon, what you do is you take the operator's pertinent skill. So with this, it's ballistic, which is D6. And you'll notice it's the red one. That's his skill die. And then I'm adding an equipment die, a D8. And I'm going to roll these and compare them to the defense of the target practice. The practice target, which is 5. And I'm not going to add anything because we're at range 0. So the reason we're at range 0 is because there's no area dividers here. Everything in this encounter is at range 0 of each other. So I'm just going to blast him here with my battle rifle and hope I don't embarrass myself. Okay, that's a pretty sweet roll. So I got 6 and 6. So that totals out to 12. And this thing has a defense of only 5. So I've just damaged it because that's the only effect that the battle rifle applies when it equals or exceeds defense. So I put 1 damage token on here. I've resolved one of my orders. You can resolve those in whichever order you choose, even if they're on different objects and provide different orders. So I'm going to blast it again here with the rifle. Okay, this is good. So I got an 8, and that's damage again. So this flips over. If you have 2-sided tokens like I do, you can easily print these out to be 2-sided. So this has suffered 2 damage, and its integrity is only 2. So the practice target's been destroyed. It gets removed from play. Now, destroying that is worth a couple VPs in this scenario, but it's mostly there to teach you how to shoot at something. So something worth noting here is now there's no bad guys here. If I move up to this standard access and finish the round with all my operators adjacent to it, I'll move on to the next listed encounter. But if I left that in play, I could still move up there and exit the encounter, and I would just not get the points for destroying it. So if I hadn't assigned him those orders, there's no bad guys here. He'd just go boop and walk up over here, and then he'd vanish. I wouldn't get the points. But if I thought it was worth saving the time, a lot of the scenarios give you a time bonus for finishing them faster. Sometimes it's worth it to just ignore certain things like the sub-objectives. Okay, so that was what's called an initial layout, the very first round of an encounter. Now we do a secondary round, and those have shorter time frames. So now I only get 10 seconds where the timer's running, but I don't have to worry about laying out all these cards. But what I do have to do is initiative. It's not really that important here. There's only one guy in the encounter, so the initiative is pretty basic. You'll see that when I move into the next encounter. So here we go. I start this thing up. So my operator is the only thing acting, and I'm just going to tell him to move up to the door by placing all my orders adjacent to it. I don't really have anything else to do here. Okay, so now we're going to resolve move orders. So you'll notice that I've got the tokens on the bottom of the door. That, as long as these are adjacent to the prop, the operator is going to move up to it, or if they're adjacent to an enemy, they'll move towards it. If they're on it, he's going to shoot at it. Now, I don't really want him to shoot at the door, because I actually want it to have some integrity when I move to it. So how a move action works is when you assign a move order, you create movement points equal to the mobility of the combatant executing it. So in this case, the alpha operator has a mobility of 2. This order token being here gives him 2 movement points. So he's going to use 1 movement point. Everything in the game is kind of sticking to objects or floating around in areas. So this is all one area because there's no area dividers or range dividers. So right now, he's going to spend 1 movement point to unstick himself from the standard access and move into the area, but no longer adjacent to anything. So he spent 1 of the 2 movement points that he creates. He's going to spend the next one to walk up to the door, and now he's stuck to it. So I didn't really have anything to do with the second order, so not worth worrying about. He's done. But now there's no hostiles here, and he's adjacent to an access that progresses to the next encounter. So we clean everything up, move this back to the bottom, and now we're going to play another encounter. Okay, so this encounter is going to have a bit more meat on its bones. This is going to be the start of our third round, because on the first I shot the target practice, the practice target. The second round I just walked up to the door. So this is round 3, and this is going to require initiative cards, but I don't use them just yet, and I can put this completed encounter aside. So when I come out into this encounter, I'm going to have a lot more cards to lay out. But I've got a 20-second initial layout to do that. So I'm going to give myself a time on my timer here, and then I'll fire it up. So I'm just going to run through that. It'll be pretty fast, and then I'll go back through it and explain the process of the layout. I've got everything I need. Just make sure you're organized before you start the timer, so you're not scrambling and thinking, oh, maybe I should reset and give myself another go. I mean, it's solitaire gaming, so do what you want, but if you're cheating at it, maybe you need to analyze your life decisions. I hope I have enough space. I've got lots of time because I played this a lot, but if you've never played this before, this might be a little bit more hectic. I'm glad I had enough space to lay these out. Okay, time's up. This is an easy scenario, so don't be blown away if I win here, and if I lose, it's going to be really embarrassing, I guess. But all right, so as you can see, that was a little more complicated. I'm going to play that back and show you why I laid it out the way that I did. I hope I have enough space.
When the timer goes off, that means I'm going to start placing cards down in the encounter. So the first thing you'll probably notice is I'm going to play cards starting with the ones on the bottom of the deck first. That means that the prop on the top of the deck, an access, remains visible to me. So it's hiding the rest of the cards from me, but I see what I'm laying down very, very easily.
So here I've played an area divider card, and you'll notice that I've turned it sideways when I placed it.
So the line that runs along the length of the card splits the playing space into the two separate areas, and the area divider demarks the middle of that space. And you'll notice that all the cards I play after it are placed above it in a new area. The last card that I'm going to put down is the AO boundary card, and I put it down like an area divider because that marks the edge of the play area, so I just turn it sideways. But no cards are going to be placed above it because there's no more play area after the AO boundary. That represents the edge of the play space. Now that that's been put down, I can start putting down my order tokens to represent what I want my operators to do. I can do that before putting this down as well, but waiting to put that card down gives you the most information to work with. But sometimes you don't have enough time to both lay out the entire board and put down your operator's order tokens.
So now that the initial layout is complete, we're going to do initiative. So that's what these cards are for. These determine who's going to act when. So I've got one for my alpha operator and one for these two thugs, because that's the only group of bad guys in this encounter. You shuffle them up, and then you lay them out. And then your guys act in order from the top of this initiative stack to the bottom. So my alpha operator's on the top, and he's going to be there anyway. He has +1 initiative, so he always moves up on the stack if I want to. So then I'm going to resolve his order tokens. I've got the 2 in play. So as we can see, he's kicked this door open here. He's got a hard cover in front of him. There's a soft cover in the same area. There's 2 thugs standing out in the open, totally unprepared. And then there's a piece of soft cover in the same area as the thugs. So it's going to be pretty embarrassing if I lose this operator to thugs spraying submachine guns at him. So I'm going to tell him to move into the hard cover. So this order 1 token on the bottom of the hard cover tells him to move adjacent to it. He generates 2 movement points because of the move order. So he moves for 1 movement point, and then he spends the second, and now he's adjacent to it. Hard cover is outstanding. It gives him an extra 4 defense. So his defense becomes 12. It's going to be very challenging for the thugs to hit him without flanking him. Now the cover can be destroyed, but the thugs are going to have a difficult time with that. So now I've still got an order sitting out here, so let's shoot this thug. So it's order 1. So I'm going to use the configuration of dice we already explained. So I need the red D6. Of course, I had the wrong dice. And a black D8. The red D6 is the alpha operator's ballistic skill die, and the black D8 is what's added by mode 1 of the battle rifle. So we're going to roll this, but we're going to add +2 because the thug is at range 1 from him because of this area divider. So right now, the alpha operator is at range 0 from hard cover, soft cover, standard access, and this area divider. And then, because these guys are above the dotted line down the middle of the area divider, which you lay sideways, all these guys are at range 1. So, at range 1, the battle rifle adds +2 to your skill. So we're going to roll this and compare it to the thug's defense of 7. Okay. Oh, interesting. So, I got 4 +2 for 6. So I would have missed him, but because he's at the rifle's ideal range, I got an 8, which is equal to or greater than his defense, and enough to apply the first effect, which is damage. So I put a damage token on him. That order's resolved. So that panned out pretty good, because he's only got 1 wound. So he'll be incapacitated. So you can just turn them sideways to represent that they're incapacitated, and then move them all the way off to the side as well, because moving these things around in this manner doesn't matter at all for the purposes of this game, as long as everything maintains relative position if they're already touching. Because all this is abstract. Like, for all we know, this guy ran 50 yards, and that soft cover is 2 yards from the thug, but it doesn't matter for the purpose of the game. It's all relative location. So when something you don't think you're going to have to interact with a whole lot, like an incapacitated bad guy with no way to bring them back, when that happens, you can just move them way off to the side. In this scenario, too, there's no way for the thugs to bring each other back from incapacitation. You could just discard him unless, you want your operator to run up and beat him to death on the ground. I guess if you're a sadist, you can go for that. So that was a complete resolution of an attack there. But let's rewind that a bit and pretend that instead I had placed order 2 on this thug, and we'll have a look at how the second mode of the battle rifle works, because it's a little bit more complicated. So mode 2 is 2d6 plus 2. So I'm still going to get the same skill die from the alpha operator. He gets a d6 on ballistic attacks. And now I'm going to roll 2d6, and I'm going to add 2 to the result of these. And what I'm trying to do with this attack is I'm just spraying the area and applying suppression to a bunch of guys instead of trying to kill them. So as you can see, the effects are suppression, and then it progresses to area suppression 2. So that would apply the suppression effect to the two closest objects that are legal candidates to receive that effect. It's a lot easier when I just roll it. Okay, so again, skill die, d6 for the thug. 2d6 for the ability. Okay, balling out of control with this roll. So then to resolve something where you're using multiple dice, what the multiple dice usually represent is like an elevated rate of fire. So the skill was really good, 6. I'm going to hit these guys either way because I'm still adding +2 for range. But each one of the equipment dice is resolved as an individual attempt to use the ability. So how that works is now we're going to add, so 6 +2 from your ability here, and then +2 for range, so you're +4, so this is already 10. So 11 when you add this one, and we're going to use this 4 separately. That's pretty good. So 11 versus the thug's defense of 7. So we're obviously going to apply our first effect, which is just suppression. That's -2 to all of his skill checks. But we've exceeded his defense by more than 3. So that becomes kind of a critical success. And that applies area suppression. And that means that this thug's also going to be affected. If there was a third thug or a troubleshooter over here, he would also become suppressed because it's area suppression 2. But there's no other legal candidates for that ability inside the same area as the original target, so that doesn't happen. And then, once we've resolved the lowest of the equipment die, you resolve them in order from lowest to highest, we would again resolve the same ability using this 4. So that's obviously going to work, but there's no other effect to apply. We can't upgrade the suppression to anything higher, so it doesn't really do anything. But let's rewind to where we were here. I just want to demonstrate that. So this thug is disabled. He's got 1 damage. Nobody's suppressed. That guy's just dead. Okay, and so I resolved both of my operator's orders. So now he's finished. So now we're going to resolve the remaining thug. So he's probably going to be pretty hapless here. So he doesn't have any effects to check for when he activates. Whenever an operator first activates, you check to see if they're suppressed or they're shocked because they might not follow your orders then. But the bad guys do that at the end of their activation. So when he activates, we're going to see his first thing is flee. Yeah, this is interesting. So the number of operators, there's 1, and there's 1 thug. It equals or outnumbers him, but the flee action doesn't work if there's nowhere to run to. Because this is the AO boundary, he's got nowhere to go, so he's not going to do that. So we move to the next one. So his next thing is move towards closest cover in the same area as an operator. So when they're told to move to cover, they're going to move towards the best cover that they can find. But because the thug's mobility is only 1, he's going to take this move action towards the best cover in the same area as an operator. This guy's an operator. He's going to move towards the closest cover in the same area. He's going to move towards the hard cover. He's going to spend 1 movement point, and that's just going to put him adjacent to the area divider. Now, if he has when he gets another movement point, he can move into the same area. And that's it. So that was the round. And now we set the clock back. So the secondary round is a lot shorter. I get 10 seconds to resolve this whole thing, but most of the board's already laid out. All I have to do is advance the round tracker to 4, and then shuffle up the initiative order. Again, it doesn't really matter. The alpha operator's going to beat him on that. And then start the timer. So while the timer's running, I can lay these cards out and then place these, or I could place these and then lay cards. It's a question of how much information I want to digest before I take actions. So this is pretty obvious, so let's take the best chance that we can here. Okay, so I know that my alpha operator is going to act first. These thugs don't have a chance. So I've got 2 tokens here stacked on top of each other. What that means is I'm using one of my orders to focus on the top order, the one that's showing, and that adds a +2 to my skill check. So let's have a look at this here. The math's in my favor. So cumulatively, I'm +2 for range because he's at range 1 using the battle rifle. And then I'm +2 because I'm focusing on using a ballistic attack order in mode 1. So I'm +4 total versus this thug, and I'm going to roll a d6 for my ballistic skill and a d8 for equipment die. So it's going to be pretty easy to take this thug out of action. Yeah, so I definitely clipped him. So those are both resolved. He's damaged, which puts him out. And that finishes the mission. There's no more hostiles in play, and there's no other victory condition. So that's the resolution of the training room. Obviously pretty easy, but it could plan out totally differently if you shuffle it up and play differently. So for example, let's say the thugs were both actually at close range, and they can end up behind cover during an initial layout, which I'm sure you'll see in the next mission. It could have been very different because the battle rifle's in at suboptimal range. They might actually be able to hurt me. So obviously we just blew them away in that case, but I'm going to play the first scenario from the training operations, and that's got also more diverse enemies, and I'm going to have 2 different operators as well. So you can see how the game works in a slightly more dynamic context. So for Killhouse, I've already got everything set up. You have a $30 budget, and here's what I purchased. So I got a beta operator with an automatic shotgun and the battle rifle. The beta operator is different from the alpha operator in that he's a really good shooting artist. He rolls 1d10 with ballistic attacks, but otherwise he's kind of weak. He moves slow, he can take less damage, his morale's not as good. His defense is a little bit higher, but because he moves so slowly, it tends to kind of even out and feel worse. And he's terrible in close quarters combat. And then for the alpha operator, I've got the service submachine gun, he's got a service pistol, and that's it. So we are already familiar with what this guy does. And then I've got my 2 encounters laid out beside me, and my timer's ready to go. So we'll get started now. I've got the round tracker set off screen because there's not going to be as much space to operate because there's more that gets laid out in this scenario, so I just didn't want to take up any excess space. All right, here we go. All right, that layout's complete. So I'm going to play that back and explain why I placed some of these cards the way that I did.
So here I played a thug, and then I played a hostage. And because the hostage is a prop that has capacity and cover, most props do, you immediately position it so that the thug is benefiting from cover. It's like that when you opened the door, entered the encounter, they were already positioned behind that cover waiting. I put down the access that leads to the next encounter, so then I can start putting down my operator's order tokens. I could have done it beforehand if I didn't think had enough time to complete the layout and issue orders as well. I decide to stack 2 order tokens on the thug behind the hostage because by putting them stacked, when my beta operator goes to attack that thug using the hostage, he'll get a +2 benefit to his skill check.
But now we move on to establishing our initiative. So we're going to put all the initiative cards in and then just lay them out. And this is the activation order that we're going to see. Okay, it's not ideal, but it's not terrible either. So the thugs are the only hostile type, so I can take the other card types out, which means they're going to be pretty concentrated in the next area. And then I modify the initiative and bump the alpha operator's card up by 1 position. And then we start resolving these activities. So I've assigned this thug a type 2 order, and then a type 1 order on this thug. So then I'm going to resolve order 1 first, because this has a chance to suppress multiple bad guys in the area. So I use a d6 for my base die, and then 3d4, because I'm just hosing the area with this submachine gun. And because we're all at range 0 here, because we're all in the same area, the service submachine gun gets a +2 to its ballistic skill checks. So the thug's defense is 7. Let's see if I can clip him here. Ooh, that didn't go good. Okay, well, actually, I guess it went all right. So let's work through the resolution of these dice here. So you probably can't see the d4s. I've got a 1 as my skill die. Not great. And then I've got a 1 as one of my equipment dice, and then a 4 and a 4. And remember, we're adding +2 to all these values. So this comes out So we'll resolve the lowest value on my equipment dice plus the skill die plus modifiers first. So this is 4. That's just a complete miss. So we discard that. So then we've got 1 plus 4 plus 2 for 7. Okay, that's good. So we get an effect out of that. We get suppression on this thug. And then the next d4 is also a 4. So we get the same effect, but because that effect has already been applied, we can upgrade the first effect that the submachine gun would apply to the second one, which is area suppression, which is very good. How area suppression 2 works, which is what the submachine gun has, is I'm going to suppress, so I'll apply the suppression effect to the 2 closest targets in the same area that are valid targets for this. Now, my operators are equidistant, but I get to choose, in this case, where these suppression effects go. So I'm going to apply suppression to this thug and this thug. So they're all ducking their heads from me just kicking this door open and spraying the scene in the submachine gun. And in addition to the area suppression, this thug also takes damage, which will incapacitate him. So that went pretty good, but there's a catch here, because I rolled this 1, and I was rolling 3 equipment dice. My submachine gun now becomes empty. So that's why I'm going to turn it sideways and see. Hopefully you see the word empty written along here. And as long as this card is sideways, I can't use it. I need my operator to put a new magazine in for it to function, which we'll see in a second as he tries to resolve Order 2. The reason that I ran out of ammo is because the value showing on my skill die is equal to or less than the number of equipment dice that I rolled. So when you're using a weapon that only rolls a single equipment die, you have less chance of running out of ammunition. Or if you use an ability, like the Service Submachine Gun's ability 2, it only rolls a d6, so you're getting a lot less opportunities to activate its effects, but there's also less chance that you're going to run out of ammunition and end up with it empty. So he's empty now, but I've already assigned him a second order to attack this guy. So how that works is now he gets to make a free morale check. So there's a limit of 2 actions for operators, plus 1 free action, and there's a couple reasons those are triggered. Normally it's because there's an effect applied to them, like they're suppressed or shocked at the beginning of their round, and they have to see if they can clear that effect to carry out the orders that you've actually assigned them. Another very common reason is to reload weapons when they've been assigned an order that requires one, but it's empty. So to make that free morale check, we roll 2d6, and we got to roll 4 or better for the alpha operator. And we easily do. He's good at that. So even under pressure, he quickly slams a new magazine into the Service Submachine Gun. And now I'm going to attack this already suppressed thug with ability number 2 on the Service Submachine Gun, which is going to be a d6 for the ballistic die, and then 1d6 for ability 2. And I've got to get 7 or better. And I've got a plus 2 modifier, so that works out. 4 plus 2. Plus 2 for the range modifier is 8. He takes damage and becomes incapacitated. Oh, I don't have a damage token on this other thug. Okay, so this is going pretty good. The Alpha operator's completed his turn, and now it's the lone thug here that's going to activate. So he's suppressed, which means that all of his skill rolls he's going to make at -2. And now we're going to go to his AI and see what he does. He's behind this hostage here, so I got to be careful about shooting him. Flee. So if operators equal or outnumber hostiles, he's going to run away, and he's going to get +2 mobility during this action. So that's what's going to happen, because I got 2 operators in the room, and he's the only active thug left. So he performs a move action. So he spends 1 movement point to move away from the hostage, and then 1 movement point to move adjacent to the access that leads to the next encounter, and then he spends 1 more movement point, and he disappears and goes into the next encounter. So we take this thug and put him on top of this encounter here, and then we'll shuffle him in before we deal out the next layout. So that's not great, because it wasted my beta operator's orders, but there's kind of a universal instinct that operators have, where if there's no hostiles, there's no objectives to deal with in a room, they'll just advance towards the door, which is fine, because I'm going to need him to do that anyway. So now it's the beta operator's turn. He doesn't have any assigned orders, so he's going to follow the universal instinct, because he's not under any pressure to do anything else. His mobility is only 1, and he's going to spend them both to move towards this access. So he's going to move away from the access he's adjacent to right now with 1 movement point, and then end adjacent to the standard access with the next 1. And that's the end of the first round. So I'm going to move my round counter into position 2, And then I'm going to change my timer to the amount of time allotted to secondary rounds, which is 10 seconds. But because there's no hostiles and my guys aren't really under any pressure anymore, I don't really have to run the timer or lay out initiative cards because I know what I want to do here. I'm going to swap the beta operator, his weapons, so that he's using the battle rifle. And then I'm going to move my alpha operator adjacent to the standard access. And that's all I'm going to do. So run the timer, beep, 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 and then we already know what's going on here. So I'm going to move my alpha operator up adjacent to the door. And he's ready to go for the next round. And now, with my beta operator, so I've got one order placed on a piece of equipment that's in his carried equipment slots. So what that lets me do is perform a swap action. And how that works is I can move the piece of equipment with the token on it to replace another piece of equipment, or multiple pieces of equipment in the case of one-handed weapons, in his readied equipment slots. So now he's got the battle rifle ready because the next encounter actually has an area divider, so there could be bad guys placed farther away from me. So I want somebody to cover that distance, and the service submachine gun with the alpha operator is quite good up close. So I'll kind of be covering all my bases, and I just have to hope I don't lay everybody out real close to me. So we're finished the first encounter. The operators are adjacent to this access. There's no hostiles. That went pretty good. The only issue is now that that thug has escaped into the next room, there's going to be more hostiles consolidated in the next encounter. So I'm going to remove all the cards from this encounter. Thankfully I didn't shoot that hostage. And just put them aside. And then I'm going to get my next encounter. Move this access down, because this is the access now that the operator is going to use to jump into the next encounter. I'm going to shuffle this thug into the encounter. And then we're going to start round 3. So I'm going to adjust the timer. I've got 30 seconds for my initial layout here. Okay, and I might as well get my initiative cards ready. I'm going to need all of them here. Okay, here we go. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh, this is suboptimal. Okay. So here's our layout. I got kind of lucky and kind of unlucky because the bad guys are all consolidated at range 1. And then the Troubleshooter, which is the most dangerous enemy right now because he's good at shooting at me, is behind the best cover, the hard cover. And then the Psycho, I've got one in the open, which is a plus, but then the other one is hiding behind a hostage. So I don't want to risk shooting at him until he moves away from that. On the plus side, I do have some cover close to me, but a lot's going to come down to how the initiative plays out here, because if the bad guys move towards me before I start shooting at them, my submachine gun's going to be a lot more effective. But I don't want them to get too close either. I'd like my beta operator to activate before that Psycho does. So here we go. Initiative. Okay, thugs first. Oh, this is looking good. This is looking real nice. Okay, so this is the layout. The Troubleshooter is going to activate last. The Psychos are going to activate second last. We move the Alpha Operator up the chain because he's +1 initiative. So the first thing that's going to activate is the Thugs, which is very positive for me. So we activate the Thugs because there's multiple Thugs in the same group. We're going to activate them with the ones closest to where I'm sitting, and then activate them from left to right. So there's none in this area, which is at range 0 relative to the player. So then we move into the next area, and we activate them from left to right. So this Thug is going to activate first. We look at his AI. He's not going to flee. Instead, he's going to move towards the closest cover in the same area as an operator. So he's going to spend 1 action point to move away from the soft cover, so that he can eventually move towards the area divider. And then these 2 Thugs are going to move adjacent to the area divider, because now they can move into the same area as the operators. So then I'm going to activate my Alpha Operator, and he's going to spend his first thing, his first order, and he's going to go 1-2 with the move order and move adjacent to this soft cover. And now he's going to attack this Thug standing in the open with his submachine gun. But because he's 1 area away, he's at range 1, And the submachine gun doesn't work as well at that distance, so it's just going to be straight dice. And I'm using mode 1. So same as before, a d6 for skill, 3d4 for equipment dice, and I'm going to be looking for a combined result of 7. I got 1. Okay, so I got a 4, a 1, a 2, and a 3. The 1 and the 2 will miss because I don't have the +2 modifier, and the 3 will apply suppression to said thug. See, I already messed up. I forgot that they only move 1. So I was hoping that they would jump into the same range as me, and I would just spray a bunch of them and suppress them. But such is life. That's why we use a timer, to make the decisions a little bit more difficult, and you don't have all the time you want to analyze your choices. So next we're going to activate the beta operator. And this better go well or I might lose. So the beta operator has 2 orders assigned. He's got an order to attack this psycho with the number 2 mode of his battle rifle. So he's going to roll a d10 for his ballistic skill, and then 2d6 for equipment dice. And this is him just hosing the area, trying to suppress lots of guys. So we'll see how this goes here. The Psycho's defense when he stands in the open like that, that's why I targeted him instead of this Psycho, is 7. And I'm +2 for range, because he's at range 1 relative to my beta operator. Okay, that was not great. So I rolled a 3. And then I got a 1 and a 4. So worth noting here is the number 2 ability on the battle rifle says ammo +1. So that's not good, because that means that for the purposes of determining whether your rifle is going to go empty, you add 1 to the number of equipment die effectively. So it's like rolling 3 equipment dice when you use this ability, because he's using a lot of ammo. So I'm going to empty my rifle with this, unfortunately, because he's not great at on-the-fly reloads. So then we'll apply the lowest equipment die first, combined with the skill die and any other modifiers. So 3 + 1 is 4. +2 for range makes 6, so he misses the Psycho. Okay, that's not ideal. But the second result is 9, and that will at least suppress him, which is good. Not great, but it's okay. And then we're going to attempt to resolve this second order, which is just to shoot the Psycho. So I've got to make the free morale check to see if I can reload and slam a new magazine into this battle rifle. But unfortunately, the beta operator's morale is 2d6, but it's only 7. So I've got to roll a 7 on 2d6 to get my free reload here. Okay, I did, thankfully. That's good. Because these psychos are real dangerous if they get anywhere near, especially the beta operator. So now, for mode 1 with the rifle, I'm going to roll 1d10 plus a d8. And I'm +2 for range, and I got to get an ultimate result of 7, which I do. So I shoot this Psycho, and he takes a damage. Now, the Psycho has a unique ability where when they take a wound for the first time, they only have 1 wound, so that would normally incapacitate them. But because they're hopped up on goofballs, there's a chance that they'll just power through the pain of having a bullet lodged in their chest and keep coming towards you. So he takes a morale check to see if he stays moving. But because I've suppressed him, it's more difficult for him to pass the morale check. So that's why I tried to suppress him beforehand. So he's going to make a morale check at 2d6. And his morale score is 7, but he's -2 to the skill check because of the suppression. So needs a result of 9, doesn't get it, so he goes down, thankfully. And now I don't have to worry about him. I just have to worry about this horde of other guys up here. So the beta operator's done. Now we're going to activate the Psycho, and there's only 1 left. Now the Psycho's AI is real simple. Move towards the operator with the lowest CQC die, and his mobility is 2. So he spends 1 to move away from the hostage, and then he spends the last point to move adjacent to this area divider. So in the next round, he's going to be invading my space. And now we're going to see what the Troubleshooter does. So this is a new bad guy, and he's a bit more dangerous. Now, he has something called a modifier. I didn't cover that because I didn't have to. What this does is after you complete a layout, a modifier and stars there to get your attention, you perform this action before you do anything else. So his modifier is to move him 1 area away from the closest operator adjacent to the best cover. So if he would have been laid out here, I would have moved him back here and then adjacent to either the hostage or the hard cover at random. So it just reflects the fact that this guy thinks a little bit more ahead than the average hostile, and he prefers to be farther away because he likes shooting. But we don't need to apply that. So he's behind the hard cover. Let's see what he's going to do here. His first thing is to attack the closest non-shocked operator with the highest defense. So what this is if there's an operator close to him, he throws a flashbang at you, basically. But there's nobody near him, so we're going to move on to the next thing. Towards the highest value available cover with the closest operator at range 1 to 2. So he doesn't need that. He's already in the highest value cover available with an operator at range 1 to 2. So now he's going to attack the closest operator with a roll value less than 11. So to determine a roll value, we take a look at our operator's defense plus the cover values that they have. My alpha operator's defense right now is 10 because it's 8 plus 2 from the soft cover. And my beta is 9 plus 1 for the standard cover. So they're both 10. Those are roll values below 11. He's going to attack one of these two guys. Now because they're the same, we're going to randomly determine which one he's going to attack. So he'll attack the alpha operator if this die is higher, the red one, and then the black die is higher, he'll attack the beta operator. Let's see what he does here. So he's going to attack the beta operator hiding behind the doorway. So to attack him, the troubleshooter rolls 2d8, and he's going to be plus 2 as well because he's at range 1. So this isn't great. So my defense is 10. We'll see what he gets here. Hopefully it's poor. Okay, so he just manages to clip me. So 6 plus 2 for range makes 10. So he immediately damages my beta operator, who is fragile. He can only take 2 damage. And whenever an operator takes damage, they also get a stress applied to them. So what stress does is it applies a -1 penalty to all their skill checks. And I also need to make a test to see if he'll actually follow my orders that I assign him at the start of the next round. The troubleshooter's pretty dangerous, and I probably made a mistake by not immediately trying to dislodge him from that position or shooting him to death, but we'll see how this pans out. So, I'm going to go to a secondary round here, adjust my timer. I only get 15 seconds for secondary rounds, but I don't have to do a layout. So all I have to do now is lay out these initiative cards. That gives me some information on what the flow of the round is going to be like, and then I can start placing my orders, or, if I prefer, I can place my orders and then lay these out. I can start laying these out to stop to place orders. It all depends on how much time I have and what I want to prioritize. Collecting information or just making sure that my operators have the orders we want. Okay, so we shuffle up the initiative cards and start the timer. Okay, so I took a gamble here, but we'll see how it pays off, because I liked the order I was seeing this in. So, Alpha Operator moves up, and the thugs activate first, and there's still 3 of them in play. So, this guy is going to move adjacent to the area divider, and then the 2 that are already adjacent to the area divider are going to move into the same area as my operators. So this guy moves here, this guy moves here, so now they're standing in the open in this area, and this thug is adjacent to that area divider, and we can move all these cards in a little bit. And then at the end of this guy's activation, he's going to see if he can get rid of this suppression by rolling 2d6 and trying to roll 7, but he's -2 because of the suppression. Oh, miserable failure. So 3 -2 for 1. He definitely does not succeed, so he's still suppressed, so he's not super threatening right now. So then, oh, see, I messed something up here already. I wanted to shoot this guy with order 1 and this guy with order 2, but that's why the timer's running. So, next we're going to activate my beta operator, and he's going to try to shoot at the troubleshooter, and he's going to be focused because I have these tokens stacked. But there's an issue here. He has a stress, so he's going to have to finish a morale check before he carries out any orders I assign him. And if this morale check fails, he's just going to do what he wants. He's going to follow his instincts. So, I'm going to roll 2d6, and I need to roll an 8. His morale's 7, but he's -1 from the stress. I hope this works out. It did not. Okay, so he ignores my orders now. So I can take these away. And he's just going to do what his instincts tell him to do at the bottom. So he's going to attack the unsuppressed hostile with the lowest roll value. He's going to shoot at these guys. He's got the battle rifle. That adds to his rolls. Oh, this actually isn't so bad. So when they're performing actions based on their instincts, they always use mode 1 on their weapons. So we're going to randomly determine which guy he's going to shoot. So he'll shoot the thug if the red die is higher, and he'll shoot the psycho if the black die is higher. So he's going to shoot the thug. So he's going to get the 10-sided die plus an 8-sided die for equipment dice. The defense of the thug is 7. Okay, so he gets an awesome roll. So let's do the math here. 9 for his skill die, plus 3 for 12. And then he's plus 2 for range, so 14. Minus 1, 13 versus defense of 7. Yeah, this thug's getting a bullet to the skull and goes down. And now he still has another action, because remember the operators have 2 actions. So he's going to continue performing actions on instinct, and now he's going to shoot this psycho. That didn't do as well, but I think he's probably still going to clip him. So 2 plus 6 for 8, plus 2 for range for 10, and then minus 1 for 9 because of the stress. Still good enough to apply damage to this thug. And then when the thug takes damage, he takes a morale check to see if he is hopped up on enough goofballs to keep running towards me with a meat cleaver. And he is, because he rolls a 7. So he's still active, even though he should be unconscious right now, which isn't great. Hopefully my alpha operator can finish him off. But I assigned him the wrong action for this context. So my alpha operator activates, and he's got 2 actions. So I'm going to resolve this one against the nearby thug first. I'm going to roll a d6 for my skill and a d6 for my equipment, because I'm using mode 2 to shoot at this thug of the service submachine gun. The reason I'm doing it in this order is because I have less likelihood of running out of ammo performing this attack. And this attack, I used order 1, which is a mistake, because it's less accurate than the one I'm using right now. So I'm going to shoot this thug. I need a 7. Okay, so I got 7 with just the dice, and then I'm plus 2 for 9. So this thug takes a bullet and goes down. As you've probably noticed, thugs aren't all that threatening to the operators. That's the way that's supposed to be. And then I've got to shoot at this psycho, but because he hasn't moved yet, I'm spraying the submachine gun at him from a suboptimal distance. So I'm not going to add anything to these rolls. So I got to get a 7. Oh, that's not working out for me. So I got a 1, a 2, and a 3 on my equipment die, and 1 on my skill die. So all I did was empty my submachine gun spraying at this guy, and I guess he's running and he's got the jitters and I can't hit him. So he escapes unscathed and is coming towards us, leaving behind a trail of blood. So now the psycho activates, and all he does is move towards the operator with the lowest CQC ability, which is the beta. So he's going to move 1, 2 into this area. So I don't like this. He's closer than I'm comfortable with. I'm going to have to really watch the initiative on the next round. And now the Troubleshooter activates. So my guys are in the same situation as they were previously. So he's going to attack the alpha operator if the red die is higher, and the beta operator if the black die is higher. And I hope he shoots at the alpha, because I don't want to lose my beta. Okay, I got a tie. Let's re-roll that. Wow. What are the odds? Okay, so of course he's going to shoot at my beta operator, 2d8 plus 2, and he needs a 10 to hit him. Oh, he definitely hit him. So I got total combined roll, 7, 7, plus 2 for 16. So my beta operator takes another bullet, and he goes down. He's unconscious. So he does fortunately lose the stress. He can't be really stressed when he can't have thoughts. I just put the token on its side to represent that he's unconscious, and now he's not going to assign any orders anymore, which is big trouble for me. So I've still got, looking at the board state here, this isn't going great. I've got a psycho, a thug, and a troubleshooter a little distance away. And I have my alpha operator equipped with an empty submachine gun. So that's suboptimal. I increase my round counter. So worth noting here is that in my initiative stack, I can actually take the beta operator's card out, because he's not going to have such great initiative when he's laying on his side bleeding out. Okay, here we go. Let's do a secondary round here. Okay, so my Alpha Operator is going to activate first because he moves up the initiative chain. And all I've assigned him orders to do are move adjacent to this hardcover here. Because I want to get away from these guys. They're both close quarters guys. And I want to get close to the Troubleshooter because he's a shooting guy. So he's got 2 move orders. That'll give him effectively 4 movement points to get to this destination. So he spends 1 to move away from the soft cover, 1 adjacent to the area divider, 1 to move into the new area, and then 1, and he ends up adjacent to the hard cover. So that provides him some protection from shooting, which is quite good. And also starts creeping on this Troubleshooter, which is what I want to do. So next we activate the Thug. The Thug goes, ah man, he's all the way over there now. He's limping along. So he's going to move adjacent to this area divider. The Psycho is going to move 1, 2 into this area. So he's just chasing me around bleeding out. And then the Troubleshooter, so here, we're going to use the Troubleshooter's top ability, attack the closest non-shocked operator with the highest defense at range 0 with a ballistic 3d6 attack that applies shock and then area shock, and it ignores cover. So this is him chucking a flashbang around this hardcover. So we're up against the same wall, and he kind of ricochets a flashbang around the corner, rolling 3d6. So he got me real good with that one. So we got 11. So that's good enough for the critical success. So he's going to apply, this is interesting, shock to my Alpha Operator, which means he's going to get less actions next round. But because he triggered the area ability, and it has area 2, now this won't apply to him because it doesn't have the dangerous keyword, so he can't get himself, but the next closest target that can have this effect applied in the same area is actually the Psycho. So now the Psycho is shocked, which is great for me because that's going to keep him from mangling me. And that's the end of that round. That was a quick one. So we move on to the next round and get the timer going. Shuffle these up. So I have to consider my operator here is shocked. So he's going to have to lose an action this round, and I don't want him to get caught in the shock loop with the Troubleshooter. So I'm going to have to deal with him ASAP. Here we go. All right, so then we resolve this. Oh, yeah, I messed that up. I'm going to activate before the Troubleshooter, but first the Thug activates. Oh, I didn't check to see if he's going to clear that suppression last round. Excellent demo game here. He didn't. That's pretty predictable. So he's just going to move into this area and then try to clear the suppression again, which he does not. The Thugs are cowards. Suppressing them is very effective. So then, we're going to resolve my Alpha Operator, but because he's shocked, we're going to make his free morale check. Oh, my submachine gun's still not loaded. I'm an idiot. Okay, he clears the shock, but I've assigned him 2 attack orders, but his submachine gun is empty, and I already used a free order to clear that shock. So he doesn't get the opportunity to reload this. He has invalid orders, so he's just going to do nothing. And that Psycho's closing in. I'm in trouble here. So then the Troubleshooter activates again, and we're in the same situation because I'm not shocked still, so he's going to try to hit me with that flashbang again. Oh, thankfully this time... Oh, wait. Yeah, he still got me. Got 8 total. So I become shocked again. This is what I talked about being in a shock loop. This is one of the most dangerous situations to be in because this Psycho will eventually get to me. Speaking of which, it's his activation. So... because he's shocked, he doesn't do anything. And instead, we make a morale check and see what happens with him next. So he passed his morale check, so he just removes the shock. If he fails, then the shock becomes suppression, but next round he gets to activate normally. And we move around, counter up. So this is a pretty poor situation. I've got an empty submachine gun and a shocked operator with enemies closing in on me pretty hard here. So let's get ready for another round. Okay, so you see I flip that token over at the end there. I decide, I want to change my mind and use a different ability. So I took a chance on that. I moved my operator's initiative thing up immediately, so I wasn't too stupid to realize what order these guys were going to activate in. So I'm first. All right, so I'm going to resolve this rally order on him. I've got to make a morale check, and if I pass, I can remove the shock condition. And this doesn't use up my free action, which will let me try to reload. So I pass, I remove the shock, and I can still take one assigned order now. So the assigned order is to shoot the Psycho, but my gun's empty. He's going to try to reload it under pressure here. Got to make a morale check, which pans out with a total of 9. Okay, so I'm going to shoot this Psycho, and hopefully I hit him in the throat here. That's a pretty good roll. So I got a 4, plus a 1, plus a 2, plus a 4. So we combine these. So the 4 plus 1 is 5, plus 2 for 7. So that hits him and triggers the suppression effect, which is the first listed effect for ability 1 of the submachine gun. And then we resolve the next one. So it's the same effect. We get effect upgrading. It triggers area suppression 2. So this guy's already suppressed. He's not. And I actually, oh no, I don't suppress myself because it's not dangerous. So there's no point in resolving the rest of those because it's going to be the same effect. So all the bad guys are suppressed now, and I get to resolve damage against the Psycho, which will kill him because now he's got 2 damage. So that's 1 damage more than his actual wounds score. No amount of drugs will save him now. He's actually dead. So we just remove him from play completely. So then we can remove his card from the initiative order, and the Thug activates next. So his next thing is he's going to move towards the best cover he can find the same area as an operator. So he's going to move adjacent to the hostage and then try to get rid of that suppression. He finally finds the courage to get rid of the suppression. That's unfortunate. And then the Troubleshooter activates. So he's going to try to shock me again here with the flashbang because I'm still creeping in right next to him. But he's going to do it at -2 now. So he's got to roll 10 on 3d6, which he very easily does. I'm shocked again. And we move to the next round. He's going to try to get rid of his suppression. And his morale's 4 and 2d6. Ugh, this guy's a beast. Okay, so he rolls 6 total, which is good enough to get rid of the suppression. And I'm still in a very poor situation, so let's see what we can pull off here. Oh. I gotta have these on hand. I got a giant mitt full of dice. I can put those down. All right, so I've had enough of this Troubleshooter's shenanigans. So I'm going to activate my Alpha Operator. He's first in the sequence. So he's going to make a rally check. I got to roll better than 4 here on 2d6, which I do. Dishes the shock. So he gets to keep 1 action that he's been assigned, and I put my order token on top of the Troubleshooter. So I'm going to move adjacent to him into close quarters combat. So it costs 2 movement points to get into close quarters combat with somebody that's in the adjacent to the same object. Bonk. Now, Troubleshooters don't like close quarters combat very much. So this could pan out in my favor. And I'm going to use the swap ability on the service pistol to put away the submachine gun and pull that out to make the Alpha very good in close quarters combat. And then we're going to engage each other. So I've already used the 2 actions per round. 1 for the rally, and then 1 for the move. But as soon as I come into contact with a hostile with an operator, it becomes a free close quarters combat action. I haven't used my free action, which is good. If you have used your free action and you end up in close quarters combat, it doesn't go well. You end up either suppressed or shocked before you roll, which puts you at disadvantage. So, let's do this. The Troubleshooter rolls 1d4 plus 2 for his CQC, and my Alpha Operator rolls a d6 plus 3 plus 2 from the service pistol. So he's plus 5 on this dice. So this better pan out. So how close quarters combat rolls work is they're opposed rolls. I make my roll with my skill die, and he makes his roll with his. And the target value for the roll is your opponent's roll. So you'll see. Of course, I rolled a 2. So he got a 3 plus 2 for a total of 5, and I got 2 plus 5 for a total of 7. So I apply the shocked condition to him. The reason that happened, so his result is 5, so that's my target value to get with my roll. And my roll was 7, so I beat him, and he didn't match the target value of my CQC roll, which was 7, so he doesn't apply any effect. So I shocked him. Unfortunately, I didn't kill him, that's what I was hoping for. And then we move on to the thug. So the thug is posted up behind this hostage here. He's already adjacent, he's not suppressed, so he's going to... No, he's not going to shoot at me either. He's going to use supporting fire, because there's another active hostile here. So how supporting fire works, where are those tokens at? There we go. This is just the thug spraying the area with ammunition in an attempt to help out his friends. So what happens with this supporting fire token is the next time another hostile makes a ballistic attack, I remove a supporting fire token to add +2 to their roll, but this guy is not going to be making any ballistic attacks. So next the Troubleshooter activates, and immediately he has to make a close quarters combat action against me because we're still in the thick of it, duking it out. But now, because he's shocked, he makes his roll at -4. So same modifiers as before. He's a d4 +2, -4, so he's effectively -2, and I'm a d6 +5. I better clean him up here. Imagine if I didn't somehow. Okay. So I got an 8, and he got -1. So he's applies a damage, and he falls out of cover. He's incapacitated finally. Jeez, that took me a while. And my operator remains in hard cover. So now it's down to my alpha operator and the thug. We advance the round counter. This is taking me forever, but yeah, I lost that beta operator real early on. Now I gotta be careful here, because I don't want to shoot this hostage. 1, 2. Okay, I was thinking about moving around and flanking the hostage, but then I realized, you know what, I might as well just run up and beat this guy to death. So, my alpha operator activates first, spends 1 movement point to move away from the hard cover, 1 to move adjacent to the hostage. Now the hostage has a capacity of 1, so I can't benefit from the cover, so he goes on the left side. That means he's still out in the open, but he's adjacent to the hostage. My second order is to move adjacent to the thug, and that triggers the free close quarters combat. So d6 +5 still, and the thug is just a straight d6. Okay, so he got a 2, and my total result is 7. So that's a critical success for me, so he becomes shocked, and then takes a damage, which incapacitates him, and that ends the scenario. Because there's no hostiles left, and I didn't have any other criteria to complete the scenario. So that was it, a bit of a longer demonstration there of how the game plays. I hope you got some idea of how it flows. My score is not going to be especially good. I didn't shoot any of the hostages, which is good, but I didn't finish the scenario quickly enough to get the time bonus, and I lost an operator. So I actually might be a negative score here. Let's have a look at the scoring criteria for Killhouse. So I'm in round 8. So I get 1 VP for each dead or incapacitated hostile, so that's all of them. So I got 8 VPs. I didn't damage any of the hostages. So I lost 3. So my total is 5 VP. 8 minus 3 for an incapacitated operator. That was pretty pathetic performance on my part, but just because I designed the game doesn't mean I'm any good at them. I'm generally not good at any game. So that's how the game works, though. It should give you a good idea of all the basics. Moving around, shooting, close combat. I didn't do any flanking, but that's pretty basic. You saw suppression and shock. You've seen most of the mechanics now that you've seen this. Okay, so after seeing the Killhouse scenario, you've seen how the game works. Those are all the basics: moving, shooting, CQC, rallying, morale, that kind of stuff. So in the full game, there's a lot more going on. There's 3 different categories of enemies, and inside each kind of faction, there's 9 different hostiles. They all have their own behavior. There's tons more types of props. You've got things that blow up when you shoot at them. You got things that you can push around the board, all kinds of more complicated stuff. You got all kinds of different accesses. You've got multiple access routes in some scenarios, so you can approach them from different manners. So for example, maybe just blow up the door with a breaching charge and go in head on, or you make your guys rappel down the side of a building and you get the drop on the bad guys. But that requires the technical skills, which didn't come up at all during this scenario because we don't have any technical equipment or tests in the very basic games. But that would be things like first aid kits or bomb defusal, rappelling. You've got technical weapons like flashbangs, that kind of stuff. And there's a whole host of different equipment. I think there's 36 equipment cards that you can give your operators, plus 6 different operators, all of which are reasonably different. So there's a lot of different ways to approach scenarios between the randomization of the layouts and then the different types of operators combined with different types of equipment. And then each scenario after the first couple is designed with multiple ways that you can approach it in your attempt to get the best possible score. So if you're interested in the full game, like I said, all this is free, so you can try it out with pretty much no risk. Get yourself some of these penny sleeves, get yourself a deck of cards, spend 20 minutes cutting out the printer components, and you're ready to go. But if you like what you've seen here, and you like playing this kind of shareware version, go and pick up the full game. It comes with the scenario dossier that's got 20 scenarios. Each one's custom designed to provide a reasonably different experience within the realm of the mechanics that this game provides. So you've got things, like I said, bomb defusal, hostage rescue. You've got an operation where there's an operator. He's been taken hostage, so he's represented by hostage. Then you go rescue him, and you equip him with weapons that you find laying around. You've got a solitaire mission. You've got an assassination mission. There's all kinds of stuff for your operators to do, and all kinds of different challenges for them to overcome. So if you find the notion of playing one of these games a little bit of pressure, like a timer, you want something like an old Rainbow Six game, or like I said, door kickers. If you like games like Warfighter, those kind of things, where you got a group of guys, you give them equipment, and then they go and they shoot guys and do things. Hopefully this is up your alley. It's a little different because of the timer and all the automata, where everything kind of has a mind of its own. But that makes the game, I find, pretty interesting to play. I've played it a lot, and I still enjoy playing it. So if you have any questions or concerns, you can get a hold of me with contact information, and that's inside the training operations booklet as well as the rules booklet. All this stuff's available for free. The rule book's available for free to see if you're interested or not, even once you've seen me playing it, because this is only kind of a snapshot of some of the rules, obviously. But I hope that you are interested and that you'll take a look at the full game. Again, my name's Andy, Placeholder Productions. I've got more games available on my website, so if you like this, check those out too.